Actually, every relationship I've ever been in has been abusive, ever since I started dating.
Let's talk
And
about that a little bit.
and I'm 57. Um, I was raised in a two-parent household, but it was an abusive household. So I equated love with abuse, with any form of abuse, be it verbal or physical. And mainly how I grew up, it was a lot of verbal abuse. And I equated that with something that's normal. And so that's what I sought out. I had, within the bounds of that dysfunctional family, I had zero self esteem, um, because of how I was treated in that household. So when I grew up and started um, gaining friendships and then actual love relationships, I went after people who treated me like my father treated me like my brothers treated me, like my uncles treated me. And because that's what I thought it was supposed to be like. And I didn't realize that that was not normal. I didn't understand it until 2017. 2017. And
Okay.
that's when I I snapped. I had had enough. I had gotten to a point where enough was enough, and I was tired of being miserable. I was tired of hating myself. I was tired of feeling that there was absolutely no hope. So, you know that phrase, you never know how strong you are until that's your only choice. I had enough courage at that moment to say, we're done. This is done. This last relationship, this is done. But here, I said, no, I can't continue this because the common factor in each relationship was me.
Mm.
And that's when I discovered that I didn't like myself very much. I didn't think I deserved, at that point, I didn't understand that I deserved better. We are our own worst critic and we abuse ourselves more than any other person on this planet will ever abuse us. We abuse ourselves.
Mhm.
And I read a book called The Four Agreements, and I went into therapy. And that book was a life changer for me. There was a phrase in the book, there was a comment in the book that said, we abuse ourselves more than anybody else will. Even if our parents abused us, no one else abuses us more than we abuse ourselves. And the level of abuse that we inflict upon ourselves is the exact level of abuse we will tolerate from someone else. If someone else abuses us a little more, we'll walk away. But if they abuse us a little less than we abuse ourselves, we'll tolerate it endlessly. I was driving when I it was an audiobook. I was driving when I heard that. I pulled over and I just zoned out because that flipped the switch, that turned that light switch on inside of me. And I talked to my therapist about it, and we went through weeks upon weeks upon weeks of intensive therapy so that I could see the disconnect in my thought process and how I saw my life and how I saw things. And that was the point when I realized that I'm okay. I'm beautiful. I'm not stupid. I'm pretty dope as I am. And once I accepted me for who I was, I realized that that's not behavior I will ever tolerate in another relationship. That was the key for me. But a lot of us, we don't see ourselves as the type who would be abused. I was until I retired, I was a 911 paramedic. So I rescued women who were abused, men who were abused, children who were abused. I've seen some situations that would drop some people to their knees. I was a professional. I was a supervisor. This couldn't happen to me. That's not what I'm going through. What I see them going through, that's not me. And then I realized, yes, it is me. And that's when the shame came in. And that's when I didn't want to talk about it. And that's when all of that swirled in my head. And I just wanted to hide from the world. I would wake up and schedule a nap. immediately. So within hours of me waking up, after I retired, hours of me waking up, I went right back to bed because I was hiding from me. I was hiding from what was going on inside of me. And it took a lot of courage. So I know it takes a lot of courage to recognize that you're in an abusive relationship, to recognize why you're in an abusive relationship, and even more courage to stand up and get out of it.
What were the signs for you that you were in an abusive relationship and that all your your relationships were abusive? Like, let's talk about from a same gender perspective. You know, I know some people kind of feel like, you know, women can't possibly hurt each other, and you know, it has
Right.
to be the person has to be either like the more butch, aggressive person. Like, what are some of the things, especially in your last relationship, that made you go, "This is not okay"?
I was I was being restrained. I realized something was wrong whenever there was a disagreement, whenever there was an argument. Um, I was physically restrained till the point I could not breathe. And I was not released from that hold until I said the words, "It's okay. I love you. Let's keep going." When those three things came out of my mouth, then I was released from that hold, and I felt empty. I felt drained, as if the person, the essence who is me, was gone. And I wasn't sure how much more I could deal with. And I was going back and forth. Where am I going to go once I leave? What do I do? Who's going to help me? How do I get away and still be safe? And it wasn't until my grandson, my grandson saw my now ex hugged up with a side piece. When my grandson, that's what snapped me out of it. My grandson saw what was going on and behind my back. And then my grandson was upset, thinking, well, Nana, I didn't mean to mess up your relationship. When I saw that little boy, when I saw the little girl in me inside of his eyes, I knew something had to stop. I knew it had to change. That was the changer for me. That's when I stopped and I took a look and I realized this is unlawful restraint. This is illegal. A lot of things that were going on were illegal. And I literally took a few hours to think back, and it was history repeating itself. The same thing in each different relationship, the same thing, the restraint, the um, all of the control mechanisms. So all of the red flags in each relationship and in past relationship, I ignored because I wanted the title that
Mm.
that I belong to someone, that my heart belonged to someone. I needed that title because that was my validation, because I didn't know how to validate myself at that point. And when I saw, I remember how I looked when I was a little girl and how I felt. And when I saw that in my grandson, I knew it had to stop. I knew that there was a bigger problem than I thought, and that I do have a level of control so that I can get out of it.
So let's talk a little bit about, maybe, because abuse is also, you know, emotional, mental,
Yes.
physical as well. But let's talk about, do you remember some of the emotional abuse that took place before you even got to the physical part? Or maybe
Yes.
in combination with physical?
That's how it always started. It always started with emotional. It was always verbal. Um, if I dared to voice an opinion, no matter what I said, if I voiced an opinion separate that was different than my partner's opinion, then the screaming started. The shut the F up started. The who do you think you're talking to started. And it was just belittling. All the conversation was belittling. Um, and then it was, well, if you don't drive me to work, then you don't love me enough. Why do I have to walk to the bus? Why this? How come you don't work? How come? And there would be a barrage of, why do you have to talk like that? You're not white. Why are you using those big words? Why don't you use words I understand? You think you're just smarter than everybody else. Why do you think that you're better than me simply because you have a bigger vocabulary or because you went to college? You ain't nothing because you went to college. All of that, just back to back to back every day, all day.
Wow.
For 5 years.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So I was afraid to open my mouth to say anything at a certain point.
Yeah. What's the one thing that you wish you had done differently?
Loved myself first. If I tell someone, then it might help someone instead of hiding from it or burying it under the covers so nobody knows what I went through. Somebody needs to hear my story. And so I don't have a problem speaking on it.